Well, it seems everybody wants to stop here to see this beautiful view, locals and tourists alike. Okay, so I think this might be a good time for me to show you what's around me, where I set up. As you see, this is really a perfect spot to enjoy this amazing panoramic vista. And also the village is waking up. It's already past 9. So there are more tourists out there and definitely more village people going about their daily life. Okay, let's start painting. Looking through the clouds, I can feel the warmth of the sun. Even though the temperatures are not that high yet, I have a feeling it's going to be quite warm later in the day. So I'm going to use lemon yellow with a touch of quinacridone gold to paint the light in the sky. Actually, I see this light permeating through the clouds and roll down the hillside and then to get absorbed in the foreground area. So I think I should use this color exactly where I feel I see it. But since lemon yellow is a little bit cool, I'm going to increase the amount of quinacridone gold to capture the warmth of the sun. Well, it is true, I don't see this color in the street down there. So you may be wondering why I chose this color to paint there. Well, this is my intuition telling me. I think sometimes it's more important to let the heart dictate color you should be using rather than relying too heavily on what your eyes are seeing. I think the choice you made this way is probably the right one. Sorry about the noise. Streets are narrow in this village, and there's a constant flow of traffic full of scooters, electric bikes, and also cars. Everybody in the village seems to be out on the streets right now. So all I have to do is put this color in the water because the light in the sky is reflected and it makes sense. Then I will put all kinds of colors in the houses in the village. But as you can see, I didn't put this color everywhere. Certain areas I painted around, such as inside boats. And there's a reason for that. Okay, let's paint the village. So we need all kinds of colors to paint the houses. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. You don't have to be literal. You can use any colors you like. Or it's just all the colors need to be placed in a harmonious way. So just think you're making a mosaic using tiles. Maybe that'll help. Another tip is that when you change colors, make sure the value doesn't change. It's important that at this moment you keep the value consistent. A little bit more, and we're almost done. You know, this is not a very large area. In a small space, we have to put lots of different colors, so it's so easy to make a mess. But don't worry, even if the colors get blended a little bit. Of course, if they all run into each other, make a one big pool of mud, then we may have a problem. So make sure the colors are staying where you put them. It's amazing how quiet it was even an hour ago, but I love this energy of life in Italy. Do you? Moving down to the harbor area, we also put different colors like blues and turquoise and inside the boats as well. But by this time, the initial wash of yellow should be pretty dry. So probably the bleeding of color on top of it shouldn't be a problem. But if it's happening, make sure you wait a little bit. Take your time. So what I'm doing right now is called wetting wet, charging the wet paint onto wet paper. So it is normal to see bleeding. Important thing is to know how much bleeding we want at this point. It is important to control the bleeding by knowing how wet the paper is each time we paint. So you probably heard, for watercolor painting, knowing the good timing is a key. If you have experience, probably it's not that hard. But if you're a beginner, it is hard to tell when is a good time. So to those of you, I would say just try a little bit using a small amount in the discrete corner of the painting. And if the paint spreads too fast, you have to wait a little bit. So if the paint stays where you put it, it's about the right time. That's how you know. As I thought, this painting has many small shapes and it seems each shape has a different color. I knew the initial wash would take a little bit longer than normal, but it's almost the end. Let's finish it. As you see, the paper has buckled a little bit since I'm using 140-pound paper, which is 300 grams. It's not the heaviest paper, but because of the amount of water, which was a lot that I used to do the beginning wash using yellow, this was expected, but the degree of buckling is manageable. If it had buckled even more than this, probably I would have had to wait a little bit before I put these different colors on top of yellow. So the first wash is done, and I think the sun is finally breaking out. As the sun came out, it has started to get warmer, and even though the paper still looks a little buckled, it has become pretty dry. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting the dark in the background area. So over there, the color I'm using is a transparent brown with a touch of purple, and I mixed it with a very little water so the body will stay dark. And as I said before, I really like the church building, so I'm going to showcase it by making a strong contrast over there. I just painted around the dome using the dark mixture. It required a little bit of attention. I had to paint a bit slowly. But the rest of the village, the houses have mainly straight lines, so I'm going to just outline them and take care of the rest later. And also the rest of the hillside on the right-hand side, there's no building or there's really nothing that I have to paint around, so I move my brush quickly to fill in the space using the same color. Ooh, that was loud. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry about that. Well, people say I paint fast, but it's not always that I do. I might be a fast painter most of the time, but it's important to know when to go fast, when to go slow, depending on what I'm painting, depending on how important it is. Speed is not a requirement. But I must say, in this kind of style, a little loose and a little more impressionistic, if you paint too slowly, it's a little bit difficult to achieve this quality, because painting slow means you're letting the paper dry most of the time. To make things look loose, you have to paint more on the wet paper. So I was painting walls by adding phthalo green to the dark mixture I started with. Well, this is not the time to go fast, so I'm slowing down and I work on dark area one by one, and then I make sure that I connect dark shapes, because that's one thing I try to do, create a look that looks unified and eye-pleasing. So from this point on, I'll be still painting the same way, using the dog to paint around small light shapes. But the task here will be a bit daunting because there are a lot of boats over there. And I have to put the dark around each one because the hillside, the dark hillside behind them is reflected in the water. This is one of the moments in the process that I really need to concentrate because there's this pattern of light and dark repeating itself many times over. Let's move the camera a little bit for a better close-up look. So the color mixture I created to paint this area is mainly phthalo green deep and quinacridone gold, but I wanted to gray it a little bit by adding a little bit of alizarin crimson. So I'm going to keep using this and making sure the value doesn't get diluted. And then as I move my way down, I want to make this green a little bit brighter by replacing phthalo green with turquoise, or adding turquoise to the mixture. Well, I don't speak Italian. Maybe some of you in the audience do, so maybe you can tell me what they're talking about behind me. But painting on plein air, especially in the urban setting, even in the village street, you're putting yourself in a place where people live. So it's pretty interesting. You get to experience their lifestyle, even for a brief moment. And I really like that. And not only that, it often happens that if they spot you painting on the street, they may want to come over and see what you're doing. They may want to ask you questions, and they may compliment you. They may share some tips on the local restaurants, and you may have a very interesting conversation. And I love that aspect of plein air painting, getting to know local people where I happen to be painting. Well, there goes another scooter. If you paint in Italy, especially in the southern Italy, most likely you hear this sound all the time. So better get used to it. Well, I better go back and focus on my painting because if I keep getting distracted, I might lose light in my painting because the dark that I'm putting right now is the reflection of the hillside. It must not look too large. It's about time to stop painting this. Another important thing is I'm painting pretty close to my focal point, and this boat needs to be well contrasted. So I have to really make sure putting the dark precisely outside the boat and its reflection by painting around inside of the boat. So from this point on, I'm still using the same or similar color of dark to paint the reflection this time of all the other boats in the harbor. But also I want to make a nice contrast between the water and the promenade, the land in the foreground area, so that the light in the promenade really shines against the shadow I'm going to put later on. I have a feeling, I assume by this time you understand why I let the bleeding happen when I was painting these boats during the first wash. Maybe it didn't look very good to you. Maybe you are wondering why I didn't paint in a more controlled manner. Because I'm putting the dogs around it, or the bleeding doesn't matter anymore. Boy, it sure is taking a long time to paint the dark reflections. I'm glad it's coming to an end almost. So when I'm done with all these boats, I'm gonna add a few more similar strokes in the empty space to indicate the movement of water. Then I think this area is done for the moment. Okay, little tidying up and little tweaking and a few little strokes, and I'm happy with how this area turned out. The rest I have to do later is to add just a few finishing touches so I can move on to the next section. The sun's really shining on me and it's getting pretty warm, but I'm feeling a little breeze, and that's nice. I'm feeling a little hungry looking at the restaurants down below. But let's get this painting finished.